Well, welcome to the Analyzation show with your host, me, Anastasia, Pound Sky Brenman, and I have the lovely, fabulous Diana Garle here today.
Hi, everybody.
In my humble abode. Welcome to Miami Beach.
Thank you. I mean, I love it here. You know, it's so beautiful. People hate the humidity, and I'm like, I don't know how to live without it. My skin thrives in Florida.
I mean, you're glowing. You look fabulous. So Diana, for those who don't know, I mean, you probably, if you're watching TV, you've probably seen her in your commercials. She is on stage. She is in films. I mean, people say that production is dead in Florida, and I think that you are the person who proves them wrong. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been up to.
Thank you. That means a lot. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that Florida, I'm very lucky. I speak both Spanish and English, which I think is very helpful in the industry down here, but also Florida is just a melting pot of ideas, and everything is always boiling all the time. And it's just a matter of looking for these opportunities and trying to find them. And at least commercials, there's so many commercials always shooting down here. There's so much theater, which I think a lot of people don't realize. There's, you know, and there's comedy, and there's so many things for people to do, where I think that Florida in particular, talking about the heat, kind of gets a bad rap when it comes to the arts, because places where arts really thrive, like New York or even Minnesota, where there's so much theater, it's really because it's so cold and people don't know what else to do. It's true, though. People are like, I want to go out, but I can't be that cold. So what do? I go to the theater, I go watch movies. So people don't realize that even though it's warm here, and yes, we can do a lot of outdoor activities, it rains a lot. So what else can we do? We can go to the theater. We can do, you know, very artsy things. And I think that Miami really lends itself to that. In the last few years, I've done a ton of feature films and short films, mostly down here in Florida. Some of them I did a couple in LA and a couple in Atlanta. But all of the training and all of the, like, my home base is here. So I really try to kind of stay homegrown. But yeah, I've been the face of Pollo Tropical, which is a beer from South Florida.
I mean, that is like, that makes you truly a South Florida icon, right? Is the Pollo like, it's funny because I was watching TV, and I saw you pop up, and I was like, I need to hit up Diana to be on this podcast. So it was literally the Pollo Tropical commercial, and I was like, oh my God, I need to hit her up.
It's interesting because, like, the things that I feel like, especially down here, that I'm mostly known for is very much like Miami things, you know, like the Pollo Tropical, that was everywhere, and then right now I'm like the face of Estrella Insurance. So.
I mean, it doesn't get more South Florida than that.
Right?
No.
And I love that. I'm like, you know, I'm a Hialeah girl, so I'm all about
100%.
it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I love that you really put South Florida on your back, because a lot of times people believe that if they want to do anything in the arts, that they have to go off to New York or California. And, you know, I know for me personally, it's always been like, my family's here. I can't leave.
Right.
My parents would kill me if I left. So it's like, and not everyone, I think that everyone has different cases. And I argue, because I'm an only child, there's more pressure there.
So am I.
Oh my God.
It's so much harder. It really is. It really is. I'm an only child to a single mother.
Oh yeah.
So my mom, I'm the only thing she has. So it's a big, and I financially support her. I take care of her. You know, we don't live in the same apartment, just because we both know, I think we would like tear each other's heads off, you know, like, but you know, like, I'm her support system and she's mine when I book things outside of the state, because I'm like, can you just take care of my dog? She takes care of Pickles if like my boyfriend can't take care of him. And
she's a great name. Sorry. Like, you know,
wiener dog Pickles.
Yes. Oh my God.
but yeah, you know, I started this very young, and she was never like one of those stage moms that's like pushing me to do it. Quite the contrary. When I was around 8 years old, she was like, no, I don't want to force you. And she kind of slowly tried to take me out of it. And I was like, no, what are you doing? Put me back in. I love this, you know? So she's one of my biggest advocates. And so it's hard to be gone for so long. She has a lot of health issues too. So it's like, you know, I'm her person. And it's tough to be away. But also, I think, specifically talking about my mom, who was a single mother my entire life, she taught me the importance of hustling. And if you want something, you can do it. And doesn't like, I think that sometimes, yeah, the allure of LA or New York or Atlanta, which I mean, I feel like I'm definitely part LA now at this point too.
Yeah.
Like I go back and forth, I'm bi-coastal, and I do love LA. But it took me until I'm 30. It took me till my late 20s for me to be like, okay, now I'm going to start doing the back and forth, because I wanted to build up a name, a resume, work experience down here where I have a community before I uproot my life in a career that's already so difficult, you know?
Yeah. And you have such a great support system too, because your boyfriend is also an actor.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what that's like. I mean, you guys, I know we worked on a production, Just My Type, and he was a part of that. I saw you were recently on a commercial together, which I mean, I think you should describe because it's a really funny commercial. But I mean, yeah, go into the commercial and then also tell me about what it's like to have someone else who really gets it with you hand in hand.
I mean, it's amazing. So the commercial is one of the new Estrella commercials that are coming out, where I'm like the sales agent, and I'm telling them to call Estrella, and it opens up with him looking at my boyfriend looking at a pregnancy test, and some other girl just like cuddled up on him, being like, "Look, we're pregnant," and he's like freaking out, and then essentially the agent falls from the ceiling, and she's like, "You need some help? Why don't you call Estrella?" And so he's like, "We're pregnant." And I'm like, "Congratulations." And it was a really silly thing to do, which I think the silliest part was I always knew that he was the one doing it, but we both shot on different days.
Oh, wow.
So he wasn't there. So I thought that was even funnier.
It's a secret.
I thought it was even funnier because I was like, oh my God, I had no idea what his side of the production was going to look like until we saw it together.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, so did you know what the storyline was?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But,
it's great. I mean, we've been together for 5 years, and
did you meet on set?
No, we didn't actually.
Oh.
So we had mutual friends in common, and I actually went to go see a show that he was in, that one of my like closest friends was doing. And after the show, everybody was kind of hanging out at a bar, and then we just kind of like started just talking as friends. We had both been in a really long relationship prior, both very serious relationships, and we were not in a place where we wanted to date anybody in general. We were just like, so we were hanging out. We were hanging out at a bar with a bunch of people. There was karaoke. We karaokeed. It was so fun. And when everybody started to head home, I was like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to stay, because I lived 5 minutes from where the bar was. And I was used to going to that bar. And he was like, oh, I'll stay with you. I live really close. And I was like, oh, yeah, I already live. And we lived 5 minutes from each other.
Oh, my gosh.
So
convenient.
It was so convenient at the time. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So then we kind of established, we're like, we don't want to have a relationship, like, but I'm down to hang out with you. So we started just hanging out all the time. Like, it was like, oh, do you want to play pool? Or, oh, do you want to go grab a drink? Or, and then it just slowly started to develop into a relationship. And it was great because he's always known what my goals are. And like, for me, my priorities are and have always been my career. I don't think I've ever been one of those little girls who grew up or like while growing up were like, I'm going to think of my wedding, or I'm going to think, like, that mentality hasn't even started until I've been with him, So it's really nice to have somebody that gets it and that wants the same kind of career path. And we always talk about how we are partners, but we're not walking on the same path. We're on our own path, walking simultaneously next to each other. So
that's a beautiful way to put it. I mean, that I think, because, sometimes I think historically you see sometimes, one like an big actor couples. Like it's like one. For some reason, I always think of Jessica Simpson, Nick Lachey. Like it's like when they got married and
it went downhill.
Yeah, because she became kind of the star and he became bitter. If you ever watch like Newlyweds, I mean that was like. You and I are the same age, so we have like the same reference level. And I was recently watching back where I'm like, he gets really petty when she starts getting success. So the fact that you guys are on that same page where it's like you're supportive of each other, but you get it. So you're able to, I'm sure you guys help out with self-tapes and all sort of things.
I mean, we have our own studio. We have like a recording booth where he does way more like dubbing and audiobooks than I do. I'm like the voice of Google in Spanish. So I do a lot of recordings from home, which is really fun. But then we also have our self-tape studio and it's great. And it actually just goes back to our previous relationships. We both were in relationships where we were both, I was engaged in my previous relationship and he was about to propose and things fell through. And
and that's that.
We didn't know each other at all during this time. Let me just clarify that. We didn't know each other at all. We'd been single for like a year and a half or 2 years before we had even like started talking. But things fell through and both of our previous partners were also actors. And it was at least for me, I can't speak of like his relationship, but for me, it was very much something that I had gone on a trip for work and then I came back and my partner at the time was like, I don't want you to go on a tour ever again. And I was like, that's not going to happen. Like if I can go on a tour, I'm going to go on a tour. If I book a film outside of Florida, I'm going to go, and I remember telling my partner at the time, who's a great person, and we just wanted different things.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I always say this. It's like, I remember back when I was dating, I remember there'd be people I'd meet and I'd be like, you're so great, but like, you're great for someone else.
Yeah. And, fast forward, it's been 6.5, 7 years since we've broken up and he's married and he has a kid and he has a family and that's exactly what he wanted. And it's like, that's amazing. And he's still acting and he's still doing the thing, which is exactly, whereas Daniel and I, we think about it and we're like, maybe we'll have kids down the line. But right now our priority is our career and us and traveling and like expanding our own consciousness, before we even bring somebody else into the world. So it's really nice to have somebody that really understands and I think for him too, it's like if he has to go on set, then it's like I'll hold down the fort at home and vice versa. So
awesome. Have to hold it down, Pickle. Yeah. Or at least your mom does. Yeah.
If not, my mom will stay with him. Yeah.
So you have been, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You have done all these features. You've been very active. So, I mean, talk to me about some of these roles that you've gotten to embody. I feel like you have a big range where we met in a comedy production. I know you've done a lot of comedy, but you've also done drama. Talk to me about some of these roles that you've embodied recently.
Yeah, the last couple years of my life have been, I think, the most fulfilling as an actor because I've been able to really stretch the range. So one of the films that's in the Miami Film Festival, it's also by homegrown director, homegrown playwright, Eddie Moon. We love him, with a White Elephant Group. And it's called El Reggaetonero. So it is it's in English, but it is a Spanish reggaeton musical.
I did not realize it was a musical. That makes it so much better.
Oh, it's actually, you can find the music on Spotify.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my God. No, because we were talking before this. I was like, oh, I know the other actor, Caesar, in this. And I did not know it's a musical.
Fantastic in it.
That makes me so much more hype. Shout out Caesar. I am going to listen to this album after.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's so fun. And it's in that film, I play a woman who's getting ready to go on a first date with another woman, and she's very shy, very reserved, and then in comes this basically genie-like figure that is El Reggaetonero to kind of spice up my look and my vibe during this first date. which ultimately, it lands her a second date, and it's great. I just gave the ending away, but it's still so fun. Go watch it. So that's really fun. That's really a good time. I always joke with White Elephant Group, that production company. I've done a few films with them. I've been working with them for the past 10 years. And they're big on LGBTQ and advocacy and like all of these things. And I was like, one day I'll land a straight character with you, but it's such a beautiful film, and I think it's an ode to Miami, and it's an ode to especially our generation, because it's we all remember those 8th grade parties where everyone's like grinding up on each other and nobody knows what to do, and that awkwardness and the awkwardness of a first date, and it's just such a fun film. And it's been making its rounds. It actually went to the Leeds Festival up in Toronto. They went to Toronto. I went to a bunch of places.
So funny. It's so funny. I want to hear about your other roles, but it's funny that you mentioned grind lines, because like my husband's a little bit older, and we were talking recently about grind lines, and he did not experience grind lines. And I had to I went through and I actually found a Tampa Bay Times article from like 2008, which is like, it checks out, right? And it's like an opinion piece from a parent, and it's like in all caps, it's like, what are these grind lines? I don't understand. I go to the parties and the boys are on top of the girls and whatever. And I have a group chat that I've had going since we were in high school. And I asked my friends, I was like, because I was talking to Jeffrey, my husband, about it, and he's like, oh, well, what would happen? Like, would the boys grind on the boys? Like, how did it go? And I found out from my friends, they said, oh, okay, well, the girls would grind on the boys. Girls would sometimes grind on girls. Yeah, of course. Girls we were always like allies, you know, it always worked. But then I guess if there was a boy to a boy, they would leave a space, which I just learned.
Or they would turn around, I think.
But then that breaks the whole line. It's like the human centipede of middle school dancing. I don't know if it still exists, but I remember.
I hope not, because I think now of like my little cousins, and I'm like, I don't want to see you grinding at all. Like, I get the parent, but I also remember how fun those were.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like, that was like when your hormones kick in. The grind line was like a safe space.
Yeah.
It was that and hugs in the hallway.
Yeah.
The other film that you were in that you said was premiering, I know you had a South by Southwest premiere recently.
I did.
I mean, talk to me about that, because that one has like, I was like fangirling a little bit when I saw that you're in that. And I actually know someone who was like a buyer separately. Like they had like a small crew role that was on that film. So another South Florida.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Bernardo Brito, which is the director.
What's the name of that film?
The film's called Omni Loop, and it plays to our own Omni Loop, which is, if you're not from Miami, it's basically a little tram that goes around only downtown, and it's free, and you can get off on different stops. It's kind of like a metro rail kind of thing, but it's just surrounds downtown Miami, and it stars Mary Louise Parker and Ayo Debris. And which is
amazing. Like both girl bosses,
and they're fantastic. I mean, the movie really, talk about an ode to Miami. It all takes place in Florida. They shot it all in Miami. They shot most of it at Miami-Dade Wolfson campus. One of the stars is a rhino from Miami Seaquarium. I mean, not Miami Seaquarium, from the zoo.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. I'd be like, I didn't know rhinos can swim.
Yeah. And so, now that Miami Seaquarium is closing, I think that it would have been a weird kind of
weird vibe, yeah.
But yeah, so it's a beautiful film about basically this woman, Mary Louise Parker, who has a black hole in her body. It's a sci-fi kind of thriller film, and so it's she kind of relives the same week over and over, but she's aware of that, and so she's trying. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. She's trying to kind of see how she can fix it. And Ayo's character is a physicist student who is trying to figure it out with her, and she has to reintroduce herself every week. And it's interesting because I was so lucky. I had originally auditioned for a different role, and then I had the callback, and they're like, listen, we liked you for this role, but we want you for something a little bigger. And I was like, okay, great. And so I did the callback. And it was interesting because at the time I was up for a film that was shooting in Portland to be the lead. And I was kind of getting like mixed signals from the Portland movie, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get it, but I also don't want to say no to a lead for like a smaller thing, but I really want to do this. And so I told them, I was like, I don't really know how my schedule is going to look because I'm supposed to be in Portland. And the director, Bernardo, was like, well, we're going to have you in this movie. We're going to figure it out. So they figured out the scheduling, and I was able to do it. And I basically play a masseuse that Mary Louise Parker goes to weekly in her Groundhog Day thing. And it's interesting because my character is still there and is very much relevant to the story, but a lot of my scenes got cut.
Oh, well, I mean, that's what happens.
Which happens
that's like
all the time, but it was so humbling because I was like so excited. And then I'm like watching the movie and I'm like, oh, I think this is where my scene comes up, because I remember reading the script and I was like, oh, well, I guess it's not there. And then I finally come out, and I'm not even kidding you. I'm in there. My face is shown for like 10 seconds. My voice is heard multiple times. And then the thing that is featured are my hands.
I mean, beautiful hands.
Oh,
yes,
thank you. You know, but I was like, man, humbled. But I was still so proud to be a part of the movie, be able to be on set with Mary Louise Parker. I didn't get to be on set with Io, but Mary Louise, so amazing. Bernardo, the director, was so incredible, and he was like, listen, like, it has nothing to do with you. And it always, you know, it's
a timing thing. Like, it's like, I mean,
exactly
sometimes I'll go and like I'll see, like, you know, it's like one of these films and it's like 2.5 hours. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch this in like sessions.
And especially because since it is like Groundhog Day, it's just her reliving some of the same scenes over and over with a little bit of a difference. So he was just like, it had nothing to do with you. It had to do with timing and us trying to just streamline the story, you know. But even then, he was like, you need to come to the premiere. We are inviting everybody that was a part of it. Like, this is a Miami team, and it was incredible. And the movie's beautiful, and it should be having a theatrical release. I'm not sure, and I encourage everybody to watch it, especially if you're from South Florida, because it is very much an ode to Florida, to Miami.
But so you started out acting very young. Talk to me about like what was your first role and how, you know, what made you want to keep it going?
So I started acting when I was 5. I got my first commercial for Juicy Juice commercial, which is no longer a thing. Juicy Juice.
I didn't know that, but iconic.
Yeah.
Again, you're really like an icon for the generations.
So I started off doing a Juicy Juice commercial, and then from then I did a couple things. I did like Gab. I was doing a lot more print and like modeling stuff, but just commercials here and there. And I loved being on set. Back in the day, in the early 90s, when Nick Jr. Studios were up in Orlando, my mom took me to see a live taping of Gullah Gullah Island, which is a very old kid show about this big frog, yellow frog, and a family in Jamaica. And I loved it. I saw that taping and I was like, this is what I want to do forever. I thought it was so cool to see what I see on TV in real life. And so my mom, after I got a couple of commercials, we got an agent, and we started to kind of figure out the industry. And then when I was 8 years old, she was like, I don't want to be pushing you into this. There's the dark side of child acting. And she's like, I don't want to feel like I'm pressuring you. I don't want you to feel anything. And I was like, no, but I like this, like, keep me going. And at that point, being in Miami and South Florida, my mom didn't really have very many connections, or really knew, she was a new parent when it came to all of this, entertainment business. So she was like, the only thing that she had heard was of a agency in Spanish that taught classes, and at the time was called Actors Workshop. And we would take classes, and then they would also get us an agent, and they would submit us for things, but for everything it was Spanish. So then I ended up doing a lot of Spanish soap operas in Telemundo and Doral.
Oh my God, were people were you like the child? It's like who's the parent? Or
well, I was definitely
drama.
Yeah, I was definitely playing characters that were a little older than me, but I was always like the awkward fat kid.
Oh no!
Yes, but you know what?
Were you a little? Were you like?
I was a little chubby, but I will say, like, talk about. I don't have any like real horror stories of the entertainment industry, but I have a really specific. Like, I was 13 years old, and a director was like, you aren't the lead of this group because you're one hamburger away from being a cow. I know. Isn't that,
So like a child.
to a 13-year-old, and that, that definitely inspired, and that a lot of people actually was just asked this question yesterday. They're like, well, you don't want to do Spanish soap operas anymore. It's been years. Like, I left the soap business, or the Spanish soap opera business, the telenovela business, around 16. But I was like, it was very toxic for, like, especially at that age for me. And another thing, you were saying about me being on time. I have a really funny story where I was 8 years old, and we were actually doing a soap opera over the summer in Mexico. And my mom went with me. And my mom actually she's Colombian, but she lived in Mexico. I was born in Mexico. So she knew Mexico really well. And we were on our way to this table read. We make it. There was a lot of traffic. Mexico City's like 95 all the time. And there was, we were waiting for the main girl at the time. And it's our first day, it's our table read, and the mom and the little girl were 30 minutes late. They were not from Mexico. They were also, I think, from Miami. And they had taken a taxi, because what else do? You're a foreigner, you don't know. And they had been 30 minutes late. And the director and the producer were like, thank you, we're so glad that you got here safely. You can go now. We don't wait for anybody. And they fired her, and then they gave me that role. And after that, I was like, I'm never going to be late in my entire life. I have severe anxiety. I much rather wait in my car than not.
Oh my God. Everyone in Miami needs to listen. They're shaking in their boot. They're shaking their chancletas right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was 8, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But it definitely taught me about accountability, I will say.
Well, these are some of the things that, what is your advice for people who are, I know you started young, but just like in general, like if people are starting out acting, I mean, now in this world, in this day and age, I know it's very different. Like there's the world of self-tapes and all this stuff. What is your advice for people who are starting out, if you could give some advice?
You can always reach out to me if you need advice. I'm very good about giving advice too.
So nice.
It's true. But I think the biggest thing is putting yourself out there. I think people that don't know how to get started, we have so many platforms right now. We've got something as simple as Instagram. Putting yourself, doing a scene on Instagram. Just start getting used to being in front of a camera and recording yourself and getting feedback, whether it's good or bad. Just putting yourself out there. And also, this is an industry where people are always like, oh, you're always working, like your agents are so good. And I was like, you know what, my agents are fantastic. I love my agents. But it's not just about my agents. When you are an actor and you have an agent and you have a manager, you pay them 10 to 20%, because in reality, that's as much as they're doing. You're doing the other 80 to 90%. So it's on you to stay active as much as you can, even if you're not getting bookings. Then what classes can you be taking? What shows can you be watching to help yourself, find nuances? Something that I did during the pandemic was my boyfriend and I, we made a spreadsheet of all the directors that we loved. And we chose 3 films that were different from each director. And we wanted to see what their style was and who they continuously booked and what their style was. They're just putting yourself out there is I think the most important thing. Talking to people, meeting people, and going to see things. I think the more that you see theater, the more that you see films that are not necessarily the mainstream films, but films that are a little bit more independent, you start to learn what people are interested in. And I think another thing is, one thing that my mentor, who's passed away, but for him it was a big deal that it's like, you need to know who you are before you can put a character. You need to be able to, what makes you feel things, and to know that so that you can empathize. Empathy is the biggest thing in this industry, and you can't do that unless you know what makes you feel things.
Thank you, Diana, so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for tuning into the Analyzation show. And you can subscribe, like, and if you didn't like it, don't leave a review. But if you did, please do. Bye.